What's up, martial arts fanatics? Welcome back. As always, I'm Coach Greg, and today I want to talk a little bit about gun disarms and why we already know that they don't work, but we do them anyway. This is an important topic to me because, I watch a lot of videos online, and for a lot of years, I've seen people who are very dismissive of anything they see. A lot of these naysayers, people who watch too many movies, people who don't train martial arts, a lot of gun advocates, a lot of people, their instant reaction whenever you see any type of a gun disarm is, that would never work, you'd get shot before you did it. We're fully aware of this when we do these techniques, but there's a couple things I want to bring to light that explains why we do it anyway. First of all, it's about risk versus reward, right? We know that the chance of you beating a trigger pull is non-existent. We know this going in. This is not something we're deluding ourselves into believing that I can rush forward and take that weapon. That's not likely, right? That is the only way I would ever try to do that is if I knew I was going to die anyway, right? But I shouldn't be in a situation where somebody has the weapon drawn on me already and I'm standing there and this guy decides he's going to kill me. This is not something that occurs. I think people have it in their head like somebody's pointing it and then all of a sudden you just rush the weapon because you think you can beat them. That's not what's occurring. First of all, most of the time this occurs, you should be doing it off of the draw. If they're already 5 feet away pointing that weapon at me, I'm pretty foobar. They're not standing around waiting for me to do something anyway. They're going to shoot and move on before you even get a chance. That's not what we're talking about here. What we're doing here, one, if that situation occurs, obviously we want to give our wallet, we want to try to get cover and concealment, verbal de-escalation, all this stuff is obviously preferred over trying to rush that weapon. The only time we're doing that in that situation is if we know they're 100% going to shoot us and kill us anyway, and it's better to take some sort of a chance. That's it. But really what we're training for is it's a static position with somebody in front of us to work the technique so that this might present itself in other ways. This could be somebody in a home invasion or an active shooter situation where somebody comes around a corner and maybe I can get a hold of it. Maybe then I have a pathway that I can follow and I'm less likely to freeze in that moment because I have a path to follow. That alone is worth it, okay? Obviously we want to try to do more off of the draw, not be in that situation where all this stuff should be being taught as well. And I think most people understand that. So when we talk about, I see a video where somebody does a long gun disarm and, they come in here, they take it and drop it and clear. That's a great technique. But I'm not doing this when somebody's 5 feet away pointing. Obviously, what we're talking about is having an opportunity, if the opportunity presents itself, having a path that we can follow that might make us a little bit more successful. Now, there are things that we can do to help beat a trigger pull, but they're not likely, right? Dropping my head off the line, stuff like that, changing my angle. The likelihood of being that trigger pull is still very low. But if they're distracted, if something happens that gives me an opportunity, maybe they're pointing it at a clerk in a store and not at me, and as they come around, I can get a hold of it, and now I have that pathway to take that same action. That is what we're talking about when we do this. But we train it from a static position to learn the technique. Now, that being said, those skills also translate in other areas. Maybe it becomes a situation where it's not a firearm, but we have an opportunity where maybe we're fighting over a thing, right? That sometimes is a translatable skill that we can work in other areas. This also could be about teaching you the willingness to do what needs to be done. By having a path, you are more likely to do what needs to be done. And that does not, sometimes we go into things knowing we're going to fail, and it's important to do them anyway. In an active shooter situation, my falling on that gun might give one kid a chance to get out. That 2 seconds of my distracting his attention, making him focus on me, might be worthwhile, right? Of course I'm going to die. But in that situation, maybe it's just enough to give one person a chance to live. And that's a worthwhile thing. If that technique helps us save one life, I think it's worthwhile. But that's just me. And finally, I want to kind of touch on the idea of just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it's not a thing worth pursuing. Yes, 99% of the time that I spend on the mats is dedicated to things that are dealing with unarmed situations, mostly focused on MMA type striking and takedowns and wall clinching and grappling and all that stuff. We work on a lot of chokes from a gi. We work on things that are high percentile. Most of our time should be spent on defending a jab cross because that is the most high percentile thing we're going to run into. We need to have good defenses against the push because that is a very common attack, right? But we also need to know how to deal with high level attackers. So we need to spend a lot of time on things that we're likely to encounter and work on our high percentile stuff the most. But there are other areas in martial arts worth pursuing And I think they're worth pursuing for their own sake. If all you do in martial arts your whole career is work on things that are going to help you in that unarmed situation, that's great. But it's also worth pursuing martial arts for the martial arts journey. And so pursuing things like weapon disarms, yes, they're low percentile, but it's nice to have in your back pocket. And it's cool to have some techniques that you can use. It's not where I spend the majority of my time. And I think somebody who does have good judo or wrestling skills or grappling skills is probably going to be more likely to survive if they do a lot of liveness rather than somebody who just does walkthroughs all the time. So those are to do that. I think you need to do the other side too. But I think there's a lot of other areas in martial arts that are worth pursuing. Learning some weapons, including firearms, learning tactics involving that, multiple opponent defense, self-defense techniques, learning how to do forms, learning how to do board breaking. All these things are worth pursuing for their own sake. I think that if you are like me and you're not just somebody who's a competitive fighter and you just want to win in a ring for glory, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're somebody like me who's a lifelong martial artist, it's good to pursue all these things. And I see a lot of people in martial arts who get very like tunnel vision on what their training is. And on all different sides of the coin. I know people who all they want to do is forms, and as they age, they have a hard time getting away from that. Even though there's all these other beautiful things in martial arts to work on. I know people who do competitive stuff, and as they start to age, that's all they want to work on, and then they're not able to do it as much, right? Or people even younger that they're so hyper-focused on this that they're unwilling to explore other areas. And I think if martial arts is your lifelong passion and your lifelong, this is my pathway, it's worth pursuing in fullness. And so when you talk about doing weapon disarm stuff, that alone is worth doing it because that is part of the journey, because that will translate into other areas of your training and make you all that much more. One of the reasons I've been so successful as a martial artist, in my opinion, is the things that I do in jiu-jitsu have improved my striking. The things that I have done in striking have improved my self-defense techniques, right? The things that I've done in all of these liveness areas have improved forms. All these things build each other up and make us better. So they're worth pursuing in their own art. But ultimately, this argument is about the nihilism against weapons and weapon disarms, and saying that when you say that that would never work because rushing a gun is going to get you shot, we know. The whole point is that when opportunity presents itself, it's better to have a path than to have nothing. Anyway, I hope you like this, guys. Share with your friends. Thanks for watching.